Hello YouTube, this is Steve Patton with General Patton Bushcraft, back with you with another super exciting video. Today's video is the recap of Season 1, Alone, Australia, filmed in the west side of Tasmania, and it's for $250,000, friend, whoever can last the longest. Episode 1 is titled The Drop. Stay tuned. All right, friends, you know every Alone show starts out with a quote from a famous person, and Season 1, Episode 1 of Alone Australia, titled The Drop, the quote is, "Travelers, there is no path. Paths are made by walking." And that is from Antonio Machado. All right, friends, we learned that the Palawa, P-A-L-A-W-A, are the Aboriginal tribe in this Tasmanian area on the west coast of Tasmania. And first off the show right away, we get to see Gina. She's 52 from New South Wales, Australia. She's dropped onto her plot by boat, and she talks about fear and excitement. The next one we see is that 22-year-old youngster, Jimmy. He's a farmhand and a student from SA, Australia. That's South Australia, dropped by boat, very muddy, and he looks extremely young. Next up, we get to see Becky, 42-year-old teacher. She's from Victoria, Australia, and her area is swampy, and we see snakes and spiders in that area, friends. Next up, Mike, 45, he's a solo adventurist from New South Wales, Australia. Talks about no crew, no producers, no contact with the world. And he's got a difficult terrain. It's jungle-like. Next up is Kate, 41 years old. She's a biologist from ACT, Australia. Talks about how the West Coast has terrible weather, and it's in close proximity to the Antarctica. And Antarctica causes that severe weather, friends. Next up is Peter. He's 31 years old. We get to see him drop by boat. He's a hunting guide from New South Wales, Australia. Says he has a good skill set to win this. Next up is Rob. He's the 41-year-old planning and environmental manager from Victoria, Australia. Says the 10 items that he chose to bring are one that he normally brings out in the bush all the time anyways. So he's familiar with his 10 items, friends. Next up is Michael. He's 43 years old. He's a vet and bush regenerator from New South Wales, Australia. No time limit. Whoever lasts the longest says a prayer as soon as he lands on shore, friends. Next up is Dwayne. He's 35 years old from he's a wildlife and environmental officer from New South Wales, Australia. We get to see him drop by boat in his area. Talks about winning the $250,000 prize. Next up is Chris. He's 39-year-old. He's an Army veteran from Tasmania. Talks about this being a mind game, and he talks about he has the mental toughness. Okay, the show starts on day 1, 8:47 a.m. 10 people are dropped, and the show goes right to Chris. And we learned that participants are separated by water or impassable terrain. No contact with each other. Chris is the 39-year-old Army vet from Tasmania, and we see him with his rubber boots on, and his area is very swampy. Feels like he has a lot of skills to win. Walks around his site for about 10 minutes, checks things out, and it's really thick bush, friends. Finds a place for a temp shelter, and he anticipates rain. Finds a flat piece of ground, puts a tarp up, and sees a giant wasp nest high above him up in the trees, friend. Okay, friends, 3.8 kilometers away, the show goes to Rob. He's the 41-year-old planning and environmental manager from Victoria. This region of Tasmania is home to wallabies, 3 types of snakes, padmelons, wombats, and Tasmanian devils. Rob hears something in the bush. So he goes ahead and sits down and speaks to the land in his native Aboriginal language. All right, 8.5 kilometers away, Gina, 52-year-old from New South Wales, Australia. The waterways in her waterways and all these waterways in Tasmania are home to platypus, trout, and eels. She's walking around barefoot on the moss, friends. She's taking in all the beauty. Then finally she says it's time to get to work. All right, friends, 11 kilometers away, the show goes over to Beck. She's 42 years old from Victoria, Australia, and she's dealing with drop shock. She's doing a whole lot of complaining about all the gear that she has to carry, and she's complaining about the additional 70 kilograms of camera gear she has to lug around. And we see her make a digging stick, and I noticed one thing, she's got earrings on, friends. So I wonder if these participants are able to bring jewelry out with them on this Alone Australia challenge. She says that she feels a whole bunch of eyeballs on her, and she smells something stinky, friends. Says maybe it's a Tassie devil den. She's feeling paranoid. Tree branch falls, and we look up, and there's lots of widowmakers, friends, where she is. Beck goes down to fetch water, falls. Oh man, she goes to make a fire, and friends, her ferro rod is on the ground. It fell out of her pocket. She didn't even know it. I don't know about this Beck, friends. She seems like she's a bundle of nerves. So we see her pick up that ferro rod, and we learned that all 10 people have chose to bring ferro rods, and her strategy is first to start a fire, second is to get that shelter up, and third is to go look for food. She gets a fire going, friends, but she looks very shaky and very uncomfortable. Okay, friends, about 9.6 kilometers away, Peter, the 31-year-old from New South Wales, we see his area. It's very muddy, and in his area he wants to fish and boil some water, friends. He's pretty thirsty and he wants to scout the area. Okay, friends, 8.7 kilometers away, the show goes back to Chris. He shows us his fire. He's boiling some water, and I noticed some sort of necklace on him. So I think these participants are able to wear jewelry. That's unlike the American Alone show, friend. He is set up by a nice little stream, and he takes a couple sips and swishes it around in his mouth and spits it out, friend. He's making fun of people boiling water. All right, friends, 3.8 kilometers away, back to Rob. He has long dreadlocks, friends. That's the one that spoke to the land in his native Aboriginal language, and he makes a real nice shelter, friend. And he has, ridge line with the front door, 2 big trees, V-shape, and he made that his front door overlooking the water, friends. Pretty nice shelter so far. Rob starts collecting ferns for his bedding. Big, huge, long fern branches, friend. And there's 500-year-old trees and lots of wallaby scat in his area. Okay, friends, 8.5 kilometers away, it's back to Gina. They looks like they're doing this Australia Alone show the same way they do the USA. In episode 1 titled Drop Shock, they're just concentrating on the first 5 participants. Anyway, the show goes back to Gina. She's feeling some drop shock. 60 Minutes is the only participant to not have a sleeping bag. There's 60 minutes till dark, friend. So she's racing to get a shelter up, and Gina is the only participant to not have a sleeping bag. This area gets 255 days of rain a year. She is racing to get a tarp up, and she brought possum skin cloak instead of a sleeping bag, friend. So the show cuts away, and we get to see how she gets permission to make that possum skin cloak. That's a long-held Aboriginal tradition which she needed to get permission for. And we watch her tear up a cotton t-shirt. She cuts it up into small pieces, and she uses a piece of that to catch a ferro rod spark, and she starts her fire. All right, friends, 8.5 kilometers away, back to Rob. He's boiling water. He says, big bubbles, no trouble. Has a drink before bed. So it seems like the show is letting us see these 5 participants bed down. 3.8 kilometers away, back to Chris. He's in his temp shelter, and the rain starts up, friends. Very first day, it's already raining. They said 255 days of rain. Oh my goodness, that's why everything's looking real swamp. All right, 11 kilometers away, day 2 now, 2:35 in the morning, and back to bed. That's that paranoid one, friends. She heard something moving past her shelter. shelter. And she's hearing those scary screams and growls from those Tasmanian devils. Trail cams pick up Tassie Devil moving around her shelter, friends, the very first night. Those Tassie Devils are coming out to see who's there. All right, it's still day 2 now. Show goes back over to Rob. He wakes up in the morning from that night full of rain, and friends, all the wood is soaked. His fire is totally out from the rain, and he's got a big problem. He's got a whole lot of water pooled up on the roof of his shelter. Well, in one way, he's got a lot of drinking water. Man, that thing could have popped and soaked him in the middle of the night. And Rob takes out a photo with his family, and he's getting very homesick on day 2 already, friends. I don't know if it's good for him to pull out that photo. All right, friends, the show goes back over to, this is day 2 still, goes back to Beck. She gets up to make a fire, and oh my goodness, she breaks down crying, friend. She's bawling her eyes out. Everything is soaking wet, and she's missing her family, and she's questioning herself, why in the heck is she out here in this mess? All right, the show bounces back to Rob. Rob is already thinking about tapping out, friend. He checks his satellite phone. He picks it up, makes sure it's working. Ooh-wee. I thought he was going to tap right then. Then the show bounces back over to Beck. Beck takes out her sat phone, and then the show cuts away to the extraction team boat driving upstream, friends, and right there the show ends. So we don't know which one tapped, if it was Rob or if it was Beck, but I hope you like this recap. That's where the show ends. That's where my recap ends, friends. But we got another Alone show to watch, and this is Alone Australia. All right, before you leave my channel, please consider subscribing. You can help this channel grow, friends. Bang that bell icon in that drop-down menu. Do select all. That way you get notified of my next video when I drop it. I'm going to be recapping all of the USA Alone, all of the Australia Alone, friends. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about these people already tapping out on day 2. And as always, don't forget to give the video a like. And as always, God is good. God is great. I see y'all next video. Already got a date.